My son called it a family decision. But nobody had asked me a single question. And the house they wanted to sell was mine. Let me take you back to how it all started. My name is Carol Brennan. I am 73 years old. I lived in the same white Cape Cod on Maple Ridge Road for 31 years, a quiet neighborhood outside Columbus, Ohio, where the streets are lined with oak trees and people still wave when you drive past. My husband Frank and I bought that house in 1993, right before the neighborhood started to grow. We chose it for the backyard, a long, sloping piece of land that Frank said had good bones. He was right. He spent the next 20 years proving it. Roses along the back fence. A kitchen garden along the south wall. 2 apple trees that are still producing. We paid the mortgage off in 2011. Frank passed 6 years ago, and when he did, the house passed fully to me. No mortgage. No liens. One name on the deed. Mine. My son Michael lives about 40 minutes away with his wife, Heather. They have a nice colonial in a good school district. Heather is not a cruel woman. She is practical, the way some people are practical, the kind where everything, eventually, becomes a calculation. She talks about asset positioning and investment strategies at the dinner table, and I had spent years smiling through it. Michael is a good man. He always has been. But he loves Heather deeply, and sometimes that means the world starts to look the way she sees it, whether he means it to or not. The first sign came 18 months before all of this. Heather made a comment at Thanksgiving. Very casual, reaching for the stuffing. She said older homes require so much maintenance. She was looking at mine when she said it. I looked at her, past the cranberry sauce, and said nothing. 3 months later, Michael asked if I had ever thought about simplifying my situation. I told him I had thought about it carefully and decided my situation was exactly what I wanted. He said okay and changed the subject, but something in his voice was not settled. What I started to notice, when I thought back over our visits, was how Heather looked at my house. Not the way a guest looks at a home. The way a buyer walks through a listing. She would stand in the sunroom and tilt her head just slightly. She would run a finger along the kitchen counter and say something like, "This is a good footprint." I would smile, but I was watching. And I was beginning to understand what she was seeing. The second moment came in April. And this one was not a comment over stuffing. Michael and Heather invited me to Sunday brunch. I thought it was just brunch. I brought a tin of lemon bars, because Michael has loved them since he was 10. I sat down at their kitchen table with a cup of coffee, and Heather said she had some things she wanted to share with me. She said it warmly. Like a kindness. Michael slid a manila folder across the table. Inside was a brochure for a place called Meadow Glen Senior Living. There was also a printout, with yellow highlighting, of what my house was currently estimated to be worth on the open market. And under that, a contractor's quote for a kitchen and sunroom renovation. Their renovation. To be funded by my house. Heather explained it gently. She said they had been doing research. She said Meadow Glen was highly rated and had wonderful amenities. She said the housing market was strong right now, so the timing was ideal. She used the phrase "the proceeds." She said it twice. Like my house was already a transaction. I looked at the brochure. I looked at the market estimate. I looked at Michael. He was looking at the table. I folded my hands in my lap. I said, "I'll think about it." Then I picked up my purse, thanked them for the coffee, and left the lemon bars on the counter. I drove home with the radio off. I sat at my kitchen table for 3 hours. What happened in those 3 hours is something I have kept mostly to myself. I was not angry, exactly. I was clear. Everything that had been slightly blurry about Michael and Heather's intentions over the past 18 months was suddenly in sharp focus. They had made a plan. They had done research. They had a manila folder and highlighted printouts and a contractor quote. They had not asked me one question. I thought about what my friend Patricia had mentioned years ago at book club. Patricia is a retired real estate attorney. She had said it almost offhandedly over her second glass of wine, "Carol, as long as your name is the only one on that deed, no one can do a single thing without your signature." I had laughed at the time. I was not laughing now. I was remembering. I went to my desk. I found the deed. One name on it. Mine. And then I thought about Dorothy. Dorothy Marsh has been my closest friend for 40 years. We raised our children at the same time. We lost our husbands the same year. We have had coffee together every Thursday morning for longer than either of us bothers to count. After her husband Len passed, Dorothy moved into a small rental apartment across town, and every spring her rent goes up a little more. She had mentioned, just once, in February, over coffee at my kitchen table, that she had always imagined a place near water. Somewhere quiet. A porch. A view. I found Patricia's number and called her that evening. She asked me 2 questions. Was my name the only one on the deed? Yes. Had I signed anything? No. She said, then the house is yours to do exactly as you choose with. When would you like to sit down? I said Thursday morning would be fine. That phone call changed everything. Over the next 6 weeks, I moved quietly and without any announcement. I did not tell Michael. I did not tell Heather. I called Dorothy a week in and told her everything, the folder, the brochure, the highlighted printout. She was furious on my behalf in the way that only a 40-year friendship gives someone the right to be. Then I told her what I was planning, and she went very still, and then she cried. I told her to stop it because I would start too, and we could not both fall apart over the phone. Patricia connected me with a real estate agent named Linda. Sharp, efficient, and no connection to anyone in Michael's world. We listed the house on a Tuesday. We had a serious offer by Friday afternoon. A young couple. Both teachers. They walked through Frank's garden and the woman stopped at the rose fence and asked if I knew what varieties they were. I told her I knew every single one by name. I wrote them all on a piece of notepaper and handed it to her. She folded it carefully and tucked it into her coat pocket like it was something worth keeping. I liked her immediately. I knew the house would be all right. We closed in 3 weeks. Dorothy had already been looking at properties without telling me. She wanted something real to show me, not just a hope. She found a 2-bedroom cottage on Birch Lake, up in a small town called Millhaven. Screened porch. A short dock. An apple tree in the back corner of the yard that caught me off guard when I first saw it. Frank's tree had looked just like it in October. We both put our names on that deed. I was sitting on the screened porch 4 days after closing, watching a heron stand perfectly still at the end of the dock, when my phone rang. Michael. His voice was measured. He said he and Heather had been talking and thought it was time for a more concrete conversation about Maple Ridge Road. I let him finish everything he wanted to say. Then I said, Michael, I sold the house. The silence that followed lasted long enough that I watched the heron lift off and disappear over the tree line. He said, what? I said, 6 weeks ago. I'm calling you from Millhaven. Dorothy and I have a cottage on Birch Lake. We closed last week. He said my name, Mom, the way he used to when he was 12 and had broken something he could not put back together. I said, I know you meant well. I do not know that I entirely believed it, but I said it kindly, the way you say a thing you want to be true. But that house was mine. Your father and I built that life together. And what I do with my portion of it is my decision. He said he was sorry. He said it twice. The second time had some weight behind it. Heather called an hour later. That call was shorter. She said she had not realized how their approach would land. I told her it had landed hard. I kept my voice even. I was not trying to wound her. I just needed the record to be clear. What I did not say, but thought about for a long time afterward, was this: the folder had told me everything I needed to know about how they saw me. Not as a woman with a full, continuing life. Not as the person who raised their son and kept Frank's roses alive for 31 years. As an item on a balance sheet. I am not an item on anyone's balance sheet. The cottage is full of morning light. Dorothy and I have built a real rhythm here. She cooks Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I cook the rest of the week. On Sundays we walk down to the diner in town and order the same thing every time: scrambled eggs, wheat toast, black coffee, and sit by the window and watch the lake go through its colors while we talk for 2 hours. We have not once run out of things to say. Michael drove up about 2 months after the sale. He stood on the dock for a while without speaking. Then he turned around and said, quietly, "It's really nice, Mom." I said, "Yes, Michael. It really is." He has come back 3 more times. He always comes alone. We sit on the screened porch and drink coffee and talk the way we used to when he was young, before spreadsheets and contractor quotes entered our lives. The damage is not entirely gone. But something is healing, the way real things heal, slowly, with attention, without pretending. Patricia came up in June. She sat between Dorothy and me on the porch, and we opened a bottle of wine at 4 in the afternoon, which is something you can do when you have nothing left to prove to anyone. She raised her glass and said, "To clear deeds and wise women." We drank to that. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to quietly protect something that was yours, when the people closest to you had already decided it was theirs to take?